I need to tell you about something that happened to me 3 years ago, something that still keeps me up at night, something that made me quit a job I desperately needed and swear I'd never work another closing shift again as long as I lived. My name is Marcus, and in the fall of 2019, I was working at a KFC on the outskirts of Columbus, Ohio. It wasn't a glamorous job. Nobody dreams of flipping chicken for minimum wage. But I was 22, fresh out of community college with a useless associate's degree, and I needed to pay rent. The location was one of those older franchises that hadn't been renovated since probably the early 2000s. Faded red and white exterior, flickering neon sign that buzzed when it rained, parking lot with more potholes than smooth pavement. You know the type. The building itself had this weird vibe to it, even during the day. It was set back from the main road, surrounded by empty lots on two sides and a closed-down auto parts store on the third. The closest neighboring business was a 24-hour gas station about a quarter-mile down the road. At night, especially during the week, it felt isolated, like you were the only person left in the world. I'd been working there for about 8 months when the incident happened. I usually took the closing shifts because they paid an extra $1 an hour. Not much, but when you're scraping by, every bit counts. The closing crew was always small, just 2 or 3 people to clean up, prep for the morning shift, count the registers, and lock up. Most nights, it was me and Jenny, the shift supervisor. Jenny was in her mid-30s, a single mum with 2 kids who'd been working at that KFC for almost 12 years. She knew everything about the place, every shortcut, every broken piece of equipment, every weird quirk of the building. She was tough but fair, and she made the closing shifts bearable with her dark sense of humor and endless stories about terrible customers. But there was one thing Jenny never talked about, and that was the history of the building itself. Whenever someone would mention that the place felt creepy or ask if it was haunted, she'd get this look on her face, like she wanted to say something but couldn't, and she'd just change the subject. I noticed it, but I never pressed her on it. Everyone's got their boundaries, you know? The night it happened was a Tuesday in mid-November. I remember because it was exactly 1 week before Thanksgiving, and we'd just gotten the promotional materials for the holiday buckets. It had been an unusually slow night, barely 20 customers after 7 p.m. The weather was cold and drizzly, the kind of night where people just want to stay home. We closed at 11 p.m. and by 10:30, Jenny and I were already starting the closing routine. There was another guy who was supposed to work with us, Tyler, a high school kid who usually handled the registers, but he'd called in sick at the last minute, so it was just the 2 of us. Jenny took care of counting the registers and doing the paperwork while I started on the cleaning. First, I had to wipe down all the prep stations in the kitchen, then mop the floors, then take out the trash. Standard procedure. Same thing I'd done dozens of times before. Around 10:45, Jenny told me she was heading out to take the deposit to the bank. There was a night drop box at the Fifth Third Bank about 10 minutes away, and it was part of the closing routine. She'd be gone for maybe 25 minutes total. "You good here by yourself?" she asked, grabbing her jacket and the deposit bag. "Yeah, I'm fine," I said. "Just got the mopping and trash left." She gave me a look I couldn't quite read. "Make sure you keep your phone on you. And if anything feels off, just leave. Lock up and leave. You can always call me." I laughed. What's going to happen? The Colonel's ghost is going to come after me? She didn't smile. Just keep your phone on you, Marcus. And then she left. The door chimed as it closed behind her, and I heard her car start up in the parking lot. Then the sound of her engine faded away, and I was alone. The silence that filled the restaurant after she left was immediate and heavy. You know that feeling when you're suddenly aware of just how quiet it is? When you can hear the blood pumping in your ears? That's what it was like. But I'd been alone in the restaurant before during closing, plenty of times. I wasn't nervous. I just put my earbuds in, started playing some music on my phone, and got to work. I filled up the mop bucket in the back kitchen, added the industrial cleaner that smelled like fake lemons and chemicals, and started mopping. I began in the very back, near the walk-in freezer and storage area, and planned to work my way toward the front. The kitchen was pretty big. 2 fryer stations, a prep area, a chicken breading station, and a long line of stainless steel counters. It usually took me about 30 minutes to mop the whole thing properly. I was maybe 10 minutes in, mopping near the prep station, when I heard it. A dragging sound. It came from somewhere in the dining area, beyond the doorway that separated the kitchen from the front of the restaurant. It sounded like something heavy being pulled across the tile floor. Slow, deliberate. Drag, drag, drag. I pulled out one earbud and stopped mopping. I listened. The sound continued for maybe 5 or 6 seconds, then stopped abruptly. My first thought was completely rational. Jenny must have come back early. Maybe she forgot something, or the bank drop box was already full. It happens sometimes. Jenny? I called out. That you? No response. I waited, expecting to hear her voice or the sound of her footsteps, but there was nothing. Just the low hum of the refrigerators and the distant buzz of the lights. I walked toward the doorway between the kitchen and dining area and looked out into the restaurant. The lights were dimmed for closing. We always turned them down to about half power after we locked the front doors. It created these long shadows between the booths and made the place feel bigger and emptier than it actually was. From where I stood, I could see most of the dining room. All the chairs were stacked on the tables like we always did for mopping. The front doors were locked. The registers were dark. Everything looked exactly the way it should. Nobody was there. I stood there for a moment, listening. Nothing. Just silence. I convinced myself I must have imagined it. Or maybe it was some kind of noise from outside. The building was old. It made weird sounds sometimes. Pipes in the walls, the HVAC system, the building settling. Nothing to worry about. I went back to mopping, but I didn't put my earbuds back in. I kept one ear open, listening to the quiet restaurant around me. I worked for another 5 minutes without incident, making my way across the kitchen floor. The mop bucket wheels squeaked as I pushed it along, and the wet mop made that familiar sloshing sound against the tiles. Normal sounds, comforting sounds. Then I heard it again. Drag, drag, drag. This time it was closer, much closer. It sounded like it was coming from the hallway that led to the bathrooms and the supply closet, maybe 30 feet from where I was standing. My heart rate immediately kicked up. I stopped mopping and gripped the handle tighter, my knuckles going white. "Hello," I called out, louder this time. "Is someone there?" Nothing. I pulled my phone out of my pocket, partly to have it ready to call for help if I needed to, partly to use the flashlight. My hands were shaking slightly as I unlocked it. The rational part of my brain was still trying to come up with explanations. Maybe it was a rat. Maybe something had fallen over in the supply closet. Maybe there was a homeless person who'd snuck in before we locked up and was now trying to hide somewhere. But the primitive part of my brain, the part that's kept humans alive for millions of years, was screaming that something was wrong, that I was in danger, that I needed to get out. I didn't listen to it. Not yet. Instead, I slowly walked toward the source of the sound, the mop handle gripped in both hands like a weapon. I passed through the doorway into the dining area, my shoes squeaking slightly on the tile. The shadows seemed deeper now, somehow, darker. The hallway to the bathrooms was on the right side of the dining room, past the soda fountain and the condiment station. It was a short hallway, maybe 15 feet long, with the men's room on the left, the women's room on the right, and the supply closet at the very end. As I approached, I noticed something that made my stomach drop. The supply closet door was open. Not wide open, but cracked. Maybe 6 inches of darkness visible in the gap. I knew for a fact I had closed that door earlier. I'd grabbed the mop bucket and cleaning supplies from that closet at the start of my shift, and I always closed the door behind me. It was just habit. Jenny had trained me that way. Doors stay closed to keep pests out. I stood at the entrance to the hallway, staring at that partially open door. My phone's flashlight beam barely reached it from where I stood, creating this weird mix of light and shadow that made it impossible to see inside. "If someone's in there, you need to come out now," I said, trying to sound authoritative. "The police are on their way." It was a bluff, obviously. I hadn't called anyone, but I thought maybe if there was a homeless person or a trespasser, they'd reveal themselves rather than risk getting arrested. No response. No movement. I waited for what felt like 5 minutes, but was probably only 30 seconds. Then slowly, I started walking down the hallway toward the closet. Each step felt like it took tremendous effort, like I was walking through water. When I got within about 5 feet of the door, I used the mop handle to push it open wider. The door swung inward with a long creak. I shined my phone's flashlight inside. The supply closet was small, maybe 6 feet by 8 feet. Metal shelves lined both side walls, stocked with cleaning supplies, extra napkins, condiment packets, paper towels, trash bags, and other miscellaneous items. There was a mop sink in the back corner. At first glance, it looked completely normal. No one was in there. No rats or raccoons. Nothing. But then I looked down at the floor, and my blood went cold. The floor of the supply closet was dirty. It was the one place we almost never mopped because it was so cramped and full of stuff. A thin layer of dust and grime had accumulated over the months, especially in the corners where we couldn't reach with the mop. And in that layer of dust, I could clearly see marks, drag marks, like someone or something had been pulled across the floor toward the back wall. The marks started near the doorway where I was standing and went all the way to the back corner by the mop sink. They were fresh. I could tell because the dust was disturbed in a way that made it obvious these marks hadn't been here long. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was that the marks ended at the wall. Not at the mop sink or at the shelves, at the solid concrete wall in the back corner, like whatever had been dragged across the floor had been pulled into the wall itself. I backed out of the closet immediately, my heart hammering in my chest. Every instinct was screaming at me to get out of the building, but I also felt frozen, unable to fully process what I was seeing. I pulled out my phone and called Jenny. It rang 4 times and went to voicemail. "Hey, it's Jenny. Leave a message." "Jenny, it's Marcus," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Something weird is going on here. Can you call me back as soon as you get this? Thanks." I hung up and tried again immediately. Same thing. Voicemail. I stood there in the hallway, staring at the open supply closet, trying to decide what to do. Part of me wanted to just leave, lock up, and wait for Jenny in my car. But another part of me felt stupid for being scared. I was a grown man, alone in a fast food restaurant, freaking out over some marks in the dust. How would I explain that to Jenny, to my co-workers? I decided to finish the closing routine as quickly as possible. Get the mopping done, take out the trash, and get the hell out. Jenny would be back soon anyway. I turned away from the supply closet and headed back toward the kitchen to finish mopping. That's when the lights went out. Not all of them, just the ones in the back half of the dining room, the half I was standing in. The lights near the bathrooms, the supply closet, and the back booths all went dark simultaneously, with a series of quiet clicks. The front half of the restaurant was still dimly lit, creating this sharp divide between light and darkness. I was standing right at the edge of that divide, 1 foot in shadow, 1 foot in light. My phone's flashlight was still on, casting a weak beam into the darkness behind me. "Okay," I said out loud to myself. "Okay, that's fine. Probably just a circuit breaker. Old building, it happens." I was trying to rationalize it, trying to calm myself down. But my hands were shaking so badly, I could barely hold my phone steady. I should have left right then. That's what Jenny had told me to do. If anything feels off, just leave. But I didn't. I was still clinging to the idea that there had to be a logical explanation for everything. The dragging sound could have been pipes. The open closet door could have been my mistake. The drag marks in the dust could have been old. The lights could have been a circuit issue. Everything could have a rational explanation. I started walking toward the front of the restaurant, keeping my phone's flashlight pointed behind me toward the darkness. I didn't want to turn my back on whatever was back there. That's when I saw her. She was standing near one of the back booths, right at the edge where the darkness met the light. A woman in a KFC uniform, but not the current uniform. This was the old style from the 1980s or early 90s. The red and white striped shirt and the old style visor. Her dark hair hung down past her shoulders, long and straight. She was facing away from me, standing perfectly still, not moving at all, not even the slight movements you'd expect from a living person, the rise and fall of breathing, the small shifts of weight from one foot to the other. Nothing. I stopped walking. My feet felt bolted to the floor. "Hello?" My voice came out as barely more than a whisper. She didn't respond, didn't turn around, just stood there, motionless, in the shadows. Every hair on my body was standing up. Every nerve was screaming. This wasn't right. This couldn't be happening. "Who are you?" I said, louder this time. "How did you get in here?" Still no response. I watched her for what felt like an eternity, but was probably only 10 or 15 seconds. My mind was racing, trying to figure out what to do. Should I approach her? Should I run? Should I call 911? Then, slowly, impossibly slowly, she started to turn toward me. but she wasn't walking or pivoting normally. She was rotating in place, like she was on a platform or a turntable. Her feet weren't moving. Her body was just turning. The movement was wrong, unnatural, mechanical. I didn't wait to see her face. I bolted. I ran toward the front door, my phone dropping from my hand and clattering across the tile. Behind me, I heard that dragging sound again, but this time it was fast, rapid, like whatever was making it was coming after me. Drag, 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 drag. My hands were shaking so badly, I could barely get my keys out of my pocket. I fumbled with them, dropping them once, picking them up, trying to find the right key for the front door. The dragging sound was getting closer. I could feel something behind me, something cold, something that made the air itself feel heavy and wrong. I finally got the key in the lock and turned it. The deadbolt clicked open. I shoved the door and burst out into the cold November night. I didn't look back. I couldn't look back. I ran to my car in the parking lot, got in, locked the doors, and started the engine with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. I sat there with the heat blasting, watching the KFC through my windshield, trying to catch my breath. The lights in the back half of the restaurant were on again. I could see them clearly through the windows. Everything looked normal, but I knew what I'd seen. I knew what I'd heard. I wasn't going back in there. Not for anything. I called Jenny again. This time, she answered. "Marcus, what's wrong?" "Where are you?" I asked. "I'm on my way back from the bank. I'll be there in about 5 minutes. What happened?" I tried to explain, but the words came out in a jumbled rush. The dragging sound, the open closet, the drag marks, the lights going out, the woman in the old uniform. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "Marcus," Jenny said, finally, her voice quiet. "Where are you right now?" "I'm in my car, in the parking lot. I'm not going back in there, Jenny. Something is in that building." "Okay," she said. "Okay, just stay in your car. I'm almost there." "Do you believe me?" I asked. Another pause. "Yes," she said. "I believe you." When Jenny pulled into the parking lot a few minutes later, I got out of my car and met her by her driver's side door. She looked pale, even in the dim light of the parking lot. "You saw her?" she asked. "You know about this?" I said. "You know about whatever that was?" Jenny looked at the KFC, then back at me. "Get in the car. I need to tell you something." We sat in her car with the engine running and the doors locked. She didn't look at me as she spoke. "A woman died in that KFC in 1987, Jenny said. "Her name was Linda Vasquez. She was a night cleaner, worked the late shift by herself, usually midnight to 6 a.m. One night in August, she didn't come home. Her husband called the restaurant, but no one answered. He called the police. I listened, my heart still pounding. They found her 3 days later," Jenny continued. "She was in the supply closet. That's where she'd been the whole time. The police said it looked like she'd been trying to hide from someone, or something, but they couldn't figure out what had happened to her. There were no signs of forced entry, no evidence of an intruder, nothing stolen. The doors were still locked from the inside. It didn't make any sense." "How do you know all this?" I asked. "My aunt worked here back then," Jenny said. "She was the one who found the body. She was coming in for the morning shift and found Linda in the closet. It messed her up for years. She told me about it when I first started working here. And the company just reopened, like nothing happened?" Jenny nodded. "They cleaned everything, replaced some equipment, brought in a priest to bless the building, though that was unofficial. Then they reopened 2 weeks later. Corporate pushed the story under the rug as much as they could. Didn't want the bad publicity. Has anyone else seen her? The woman in the old uniform. Jenny finally looked at me. Yeah, over the years, a few people have reported weird things. Shadows moving when no one's there, equipment turning on by itself, objects moving, and sometimes people see her, usually during closing shifts, usually when someone's alone. Why didn't you tell me this before? I asked. Would you have believed me? If I'd just walked up to you on your first day and said, hey, by the way, this place is haunted by the ghost of a dead cleaner, would you have believed me? She had a point. What do we do now? I asked. Jenny pulled out her phone. I'm calling Rick. Rick was the district manager, our boss's boss. He needs to come lock up. There's no way I'm sending you back in there alone, and I'm not going in alone either. While we waited for Rick to arrive, Jenny told me more about Linda Vasquez, how she'd been a single mother, working 2 jobs to support her 3 kids, how everyone who knew her said she was kind and hardworking, how her death had devastated her family and left the mystery unsolved for decades. Some people think she saw something she wasn't supposed to see, Jenny said. That maybe someone was using the restaurant for something illegal, drug deals or something, and she walked in on it. But there was never any evidence of that. What do you think happened? I asked. Jenny was quiet for a long moment. I think something evil has been in that building for a long time. Maybe it was there before Linda. Maybe it killed her. And I think part of her is still there, trapped, trying to warn people. Rick showed up about 20 minutes later in his pickup truck. He was a big guy in his 50s, former military, not the type to believe in ghosts. Jenny explained the situation to him, leaving out some of the more supernatural details and focusing on the fact that I'd gotten spooked and we didn't feel safe finishing the closing routine. He sighed, clearly annoyed. All right, I'll go in and finish up. You 2 can head home. Rick, I really don't think you should go in there alone, Jenny said. I've been doing this for 30 years, he said. I think I can handle locking up a KFC. He took the keys from Jenny and headed toward the front door. We watched him unlock it and disappear inside. For a few minutes, everything seemed fine. We could see him moving around inside, checking things, turning off lights. Then we saw him stop in the middle of the dining room. He was standing perfectly still, looking toward the back of the restaurant, toward the bathrooms and supply closet. Something's wrong, I said. Jenny had her phone out, ready to call him. Rick, she said when he answered. You okay in there? We couldn't hear what he said, but we saw him nod and wave at us through the window. Then he quickly walked to the front door, came outside, and locked it behind him. His face was pale. All right, I finished the cash count and locked everything up. You 2 can go home. Rick, what did you see? Jenny asked. Nothing, he said, too quickly. Just old building. Makes weird noises, that's all. But I could see it in his eyes. He'd seen something, or heard something, and it had shaken him more than he wanted to admit. Rick got in his truck and drove off, without another word. Jenny looked at me. You still have to work your shifts this week, but I'm going to talk to the scheduling manager about getting you moved to day shifts only. No more closing. I don't think I want to work here at all anymore, I said. I understand, Jenny said, but give it a few days. See how you feel. I worked 6 more day shifts over the next 2 weeks. Every moment I was in that building, I felt like I was being watched. I couldn't go near the supply closet without feeling sick to my stomach. I couldn't look down the hallway towards the bathrooms without imagining that woman in the old uniform standing there, slowly turning toward me. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I put in my 2 weeks' notice, but I only made it 1 week before I called in and told them I wasn't coming back. Jenny understood. She didn't try to talk me out of it. She just said, "Take care of yourself, Marcus. And if you ever want to talk about what happened, I'm here." That was 3 years ago. I still live in Columbus, but I avoid that part of town. I've driven past the KFC a few times, and it's still open, still operating normally. People still go there to buy chicken, completely unaware of what happened there in 1987, completely unaware of what still lingers there. I've tried to research Linda Vasquez's death, but there's almost nothing online about it. A few old newspaper articles from 1987 mention a woman found dead in a local restaurant, but they don't provide many details. It's like the whole thing has been scrubbed from public record. Sometimes I wonder if other people have seen what I saw, if other closing shift workers have experienced that same terror, that same overwhelming sense of wrongness. I wonder if they quit too, or if they convinced themselves it was nothing. And sometimes, late at night when I can't sleep, I think about Linda Vasquez. I think about what her last moments must have been like, hiding in that supply closet, terrified of something she couldn't escape. I think about how she's still there, trapped in some way I can't understand, reliving that nightmare over and over. I'll never work another closing shift at a restaurant. I'll never be alone in a building like that again after dark, because I know now that some places hold on to the things that happen in them. Some places don't let go of their dead. And that KFC, that old rundown building on the outskirts of Columbus, is one of those places. If you're ever driving through Ohio and you see a KFC that looks a little too old, a little too run down, a little too isolated from everything else, keep driving. Don't stop. Don't go inside. And whatever you do, if you're working a closing shift anywhere and you hear that dragging sound in the darkness, just leave. Don't investigate. Don't try to be brave. Don't convince yourself there's a rational explanation. Just get out. Because some things that seem impossible are actually real, and some warnings are worth listening to, even if they come from a terrified fast food worker who learned the truth the hard way. That's my story. I hope you never have a story like it. I hope you never have to experience what I experienced that November night in 2019. But if you do, remember what I said. Just leave. Your life is worth more than any job.